icon as opposed to your face, but we do like to record it so people can watch it afterwards. Second thing is the mute button. So we're going to keep everybody on mute for the duration of the presentation, just because the background noise can be kind of distracting. But we would like people to put questions into the chat. So if you see on your screen something that looks like a little conversation bubble, that's where you can type into the chat. So feel free to type questions in as we go along, and I'll be keeping an eye on them. And if I can interject into Brenda and Karen when they're presenting with a question, I'll do so. Otherwise, I'll read them out at the end. And then at the end, we'll take mute off and we can have a conversation. And so feel free to keep your questions to the end if you want to talk about things or ask us any questions. We'll have lots of time to answer those questions and discuss at the end. And in the chat, we wanted to add, Brenda had a great idea to find out where everybody's joining us from. So if you want to go into the chat and just say where you're joining us from, we think that would be really interesting to hear, because sometimes we get people from all over North America or wherever. So that's kind of neat. And I think that's everything I wanted to say for the introduction. Brenda, is there anything else that you want to add?
I don't think so. Are we ready to start showing the, everybody's popping in now. Pop, pop, pop. That's great.
Popping in.
Oh, Canmore, New Mexico, Fort McMurray.
Oh,
that's
I used to live in New Mexico. That's so cool. Excellent. That's such a good question to ask that. All right, so if you want to start the slides, Brenda, I'll just jump into a really quick overview about our little company, and then we'll get into the wonderful presentation by Karen and Brenda. And slide view. Excellent. Okay, you can carry on. Okay, so Proactive Seniors. We are a local company. We started here in Calgary, which is where I'm coming from. And we have an office now in Edmonton and another one in Kelowna. We started this business in 2016, really because we saw such a need for families and seniors to have access to information that's so hard to find, and to have some advice and guidance as they're trying to navigate through their choices and what they need to be able to have the proper care. And so this is why we kind of came together to be able to provide that source of information to people. So I have the most wonderful team that we all work with, and everybody comes from different backgrounds, from physio and occupational therapy and pharmacy and home care and gerontology and nursing. And so we can all bring our expertise and experience together and really help our clients have the best of our advice and help them kind of make proactive decisions and be well prepared for aging well. Oh, that's my phone. If you want to go on to the next one, please. Thanks. Okay, and so a little bit about our services. I'll just spend a couple minutes here. So we've kind of grouped the services that we offer into these categories. So proactive seniors planning is typically when seniors are wanting to stay home and age in place. And so what we like to do is set a really comprehensive, detailed plan for those families so that they know exactly what services and supports and programs that they can access to make that goal of staying home more successful. And so we look at things like home safety and medication review and a really comprehensive look at everything, because to stay home is perfectly doable. It just means that you need to know what is out there to support you and how to get those services on board in an early time frame so that you can get the best benefit out of them. So that's our proactive seniors planning. Seniors housing support. We are just passionate about making sure that seniors who do need to move or want to move into some kind of supported living setting, whether that's a retirement residence or a lodge or a shared home or a care facility, it's really important to us that seniors get into the place that's their absolute best fit. Because if the fit is great, they thrive and they're happy and they're really getting the best care. And if the fit isn't great, it's just not a great experience. So we put a lot of effort into making sure people have the information to make really great decisions about where to move to if that's what they need to do. Dementia care and caregiver coaching is where we're helping families who are traveling along that journey of having a loved one with dementia to help make sure that they know what services and programs and supports they can access, and also to provide them ongoing support as they travel along that journey because things can change so regularly, and it really helps to have someone they can reach out to, and we can help with problem solving and tips and strategies. And then family support is a service that we provide to those clients in those three prior categories, just filling in the gaps. So if someone needs to be taken to a medical appointment or they need help with paperwork, we're here to help with that because we don't want our clients falling through the cracks and not having a good outcome because it was something that they needed help with and there wasn't anyone to help them. So we're there to support our clients and our families with those little tasks. And then finally, occupational therapy and physiotherapy. We have these great professionals on our team, and sometimes those services are a little hard to come by in the public health system. And so we're very happy to provide those specialty services in home or in a retirement residence as needed. Can be home safety evaluations or ordering equipment or rehab after surgery, that kind of thing. So that is our little company. And Brenda, you can carry on. I'm going to hand it over now to our guest speaker, Karen Tyrell. Thank you so much for joining us, Karen. She's here from BC, and her company is Personalized Dementia Solutions, and she's going to help participate in our presentation and give some stories about scenarios she's seen that help with communication when you have a loved one with dementia. And then our very own Brenda, who's here joining us from Kelowna, who's also going to sort of co-present with Karen, and they're just both such a wealth of information. So I'm going to hand it over to Karen to talk a little bit about herself, and then to Brenda, and we'll carry on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kathy. So thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. And there's just so many people I wish I can get to see. If you were in a crowd, it would be so much more fun. But unfortunately, we need to adapt to this new world. For those of you that don't know me, I have been very, very passionate about dementia care since my early 20s. So it was 1995 when I got into this industry of supporting older adults. Now, my background is not in nursing. My background is in therapeutic recreation in the field of gerontology. So over the years, I've had many courses, many programs, graduated from different diplomas. But for the most part, I knew right away that working with seniors, working with people with dementia in particularly, was my main focus, my main passion. I just felt like I was driven to want to help these individuals with dementia and their families. So 25 years, worked also as an executive director for the Alzheimer's Society in my community of Brockville, Ontario, if anybody knows Ontario, before I moved to BC in 2009. And in 2009, I started my company, Personalized Dementia Solutions, to help families who are on this journey, who aren't getting the right support. And so I can explain a little bit more later about my consulting that I provide, the support that I provide, the free support groups that I provide for family caregivers. But we also concentrate a lot on education, educating those frontline workers. So I will pass things now to Brenda.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. I'm so delighted that you're here joining us today for sure. I am an advisor with Proactive Seniors in Kelowna. I'm an active volunteer with the Alzheimer's Society of BC. I moved to the Okanagan from Calgary about 3 years ago, I think now. In Calgary, I worked for 20 plus years in senior living as an executive director, general manager, everything from memory care to independent living. So basically the whole gamut of senior living communities. I am a lifelong learner. I have also have some education in gerontology. I have a degree in gerontology. I've done many courses along the way and through the Alzheimer's Society and other places as well. But my most recent educational experience has been I just graduated from the Certified Dementia Care Provider program that Karen herself authored. And it was just an amazing experience. And I certainly would recommend that to anybody that's looking for deeper education about caring for people with dementia. Like Karen, I'm passionate about supporting people living with dementia and their families, their caregivers. And also, I'm also passionate about creating dementia-friendly communities. So, so this opportunity to help educate and to partner with Karen is just wonderful, and I'm just really delighted. So what are we going to talk about today? Today, the name of the webinar is Keeping Your Cool, Calm and Effective Dementia Communication. So, although we are assuming that many of you are in a caregiving role, which is what's led you to this webinar today, we also thought that it would be helpful to at least do some Dementia 101, which is pretty much the basic knowledge about dementia. We're going to talk a little bit about the stages of dementia and what you might see as your person that you're caring for progresses through dementia. And then we're going to turn it over to Karen, and Karen's going to give us tips for dementia care and communication. And then last but definitely not least, we are going to talk about self-compassion and self-care, which is obviously so important in terms of your role in preventing caregiver burnout and compassion fatigue. So please, please, please use the chat box to ask any questions or share your comments at any time. I know Kathy is going to be monitoring the chat box, and so what we hope to do is we're going to leave time between Karen's presentation and before we talk about self-compassion, and we would really love for you to share your experiences and ask any questions that you have. So Kathy, can you please start the poll, and what is your caregiving role? Do you know how to do that?
I do not. How do I do that?
Okay, so at the top there, it should say polls.
Yep.
You click on that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you could launch the poll, which would be the first poll.
Got it.
And so
Poll
what
is
we'd
launched.
like to see, so what we'd like to see is everybody's caregiving role. So if you could take the time to quickly share your response there, that would be fantastic. Can you see the responses, Kathy?
I can. Can you see them too, Brenda?
No, I'm afraid I can't. So I'm going to be
I
relying
can
on
see
you.
them too. Let's give it just a moment.
Yes.
So we have 8 votes coming in. Votes are coming in. So far, it's 50-50 between a work or career and your parent. So caring for your parent. So we've got pretty much half and half.
Mhm.
Leaning towards 60-40 now for work versus parent. So that's great. I think that's 10 votes in. So that gives us an idea that it's kind of split down the middle. You're either working with people with dementia or your parent has dementia.
Great.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now, or if you want, you can just carry on, Brenda, and I'll keep an eye on it.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for sharing your own personal experience and why you're here today. So again, just a really blue sky, high level overview of dementia. Dementia itself is not a disease. As many of you know, it's a syndrome which describes a set of chronic and progressive symptoms affecting brain function. These are sort of a quick and dirty overview of the types of dementias. As many of you probably know, Alzheimer's is 60 to 80% of that. But dementia itself can be caused by a neurodegenerative disease, which is your nerve cells in your brain. Could also be caused by a vascular disease, blood vessels and blood flow in your brain, and could also be caused by injury. So there are a number of different things that may lead to dementia, but it's important to note that it's not a normal part of aging. And if you suspect that you have dementia, you absolutely should get to your doctor. It's important, very important, to get an early and accurate diagnosis. Dementia by the numbers, the statistics are staggering, and really, I think the last time they actually did, as far as Statistics Canada go, did a count, there was 450,000 people in Canada that were living with a diagnosed dementia. So that was 2017. So you can imagine that that number is only going to be quite a bit higher now. 2/3 of those people are women. And your risk doubles with every 5-year increase in age between 65 and 84. So really, dementia is the progressive impairment in your memory, in your planning, your judgment, basic math skills, your person's awareness of person, place, and time, the ability to communicate. All of these things, as dementia progresses, you will see progressive impairment in. The early stages of dementia, you may notice your person that you're caring for has difficulty communicating. This means they may not be able to find their words, or they may be using the wrong words. They're forgetful. Perhaps they don't remember a recent conversation as if it never happened, and they may have repeated questions for you. Confusion for time and place. They may not know the year, the month, the city, or even their current address. And you may notice changes in mood and behavior. They may become withdrawn, critical, or even lose interest in the hobbies or activities that they always loved. In the middle stages, you may notice a lack of judgment. Perhaps they're dressing for winter and summer, or vice versa. Trouble with the IADLs, the instrumental activities of daily living. Those are slightly more complex skills like managing finances, handling transportation, shopping, communication devices like phones, etc., medications, doing laundry. You get the point. But at this stage, middle stages, you're definitely seeing trouble with those activities. Isolation and withdrawal, restlessness, short attention span, sundowning or late day confusion. I know when Karen talks to us about her care and communication tips, we're going to be doing some examples there to give you some ideas of what that is, for one thing, and also how to deal with it. I was speaking to a caregiver just yesterday, and he was sharing with me that, this is not a linear journey. He feels like his wife lives on, I think he described it as planet Alzheimer's, where basically occasionally she would come down from the planet and be the kind of person that he always remembered her to be, but then she would always end up going back to planet Alzheimer's. I thought that was a good metaphor. In fact, I think there's actually a book called Welcome to Planet Alzheimer's that was written by somebody that has been a caregiver. So in late stages, you may notice even further difficulty communicating, more disorientation. Incontinence will often become an issue at this stage. And your loved one, your person may require help with ADLs, the activities of daily living, which are grooming, toileting, dressing, eating, drinking. So, yeah, and then the final stages, obviously. So at this point in time, it may be necessary to move your person into long-term care or to increase caregiver support. So again, that's a fairly high level look at the progression in dementia, but I think it's important to notice that in addition to the changes that we talked about, as dementia progresses, you may also notice unusual behaviors that you never saw before in your loved one. And those behaviors are actually an attempt to communicate when your person can no longer express themselves verbally. You may see wandering, exit seeking, agitation, pacing. You have to be the detective and ask yourself why. So what we'd like to know at this stage, before I turn it over to Karen, our expert, is what is your biggest caregiving concern? So could you do the next poll for us, Kathy, please? Oops. You're on mute.
Okay, there it is. Okay, so this poll says, what is your biggest caregiving concern? And your choices are communication challenges, difficult behaviors, self-care, balance, or access to help and support. So we'd love to hear from you if you want to submit your answers on what is your biggest challenge as a caregiver, whether that is as an employed caregiver or a family member. I don't see any results coming in, so I'm just wondering if it's working.
Actually, I can see the results.
I can see them coming in now too. This just took a second here. So far we've got 10 people that have voted. So it's kind of split. About 40% is behavior. So those challenging behaviors where you just don't understand why why your loved one is doing what they're doing. So that's 40%. And then we've got 20% in communication challenges and 30% with that balance and self-care. And then a small portion, just 9%, that are challenged with finding access to help or support. So that's kind of nice to hear that you're not finding that to be your biggest challenge. So we're getting close to sort of split evenly between the behavior and self-care, and a little bit less on communication challenges, about a quarter of the respondents. Thank you, guys. That's great to hear. Great to understand.
That is great. Thank you so much for sharing your challenges with us. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to our expert, Karen, and let her tell you a little bit about tips for caregiver or dementia care and communication tips. So Karen, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Brenda. All right, so know that I would love to have more time. We've only got an hour together. There's so much I could be delving into, but keeping it higher level. Didn't know who would be on the call today, but it looks like a mixture of people who are in the profession as well as caring for someone. So it seems to be split. What I'm hoping that I can do here is, maybe if you don't already know these tips, that I'm giving you some new tools in your tool belt. But if you were aware of these tips, sometimes refreshers are very important and they're very helpful. So knowing that you're getting another refresher just to remind you, but also that some people just need that validation that they're doing the right thing. They've been doing it right all along. So hopefully we're going to give you some new tips as well as some validation and a little bit of refresher here. So again, I wish I knew who is here, and I wish I would have had time to get to know everyone at first, but here goes. But know that some of this information is coming from my book called Cracking the Dementia Code. And this is actually it came as a workshop first, and then it turned into a published book. But I teach this for frontline workers. It's a certificate program mainly on how we can cope with changed behaviors. So if some of you who are working in the industry and have chosen the difficult behaviors, to know that I have a system that I share in Cracking the Dementia Code if you're interested. But I obviously can't share all the book, but here we go. We're going to take a deep breath, everyone, as I go into our 5 top tips, high-level tips. And number 1. It has to be number 1 to share that we really want to keep the peace. This is the ultimate goal for whoever we're supporting. We want to keep the peace because, as you know, when there's peace, when there's harmony, there's peace also for you. So we want you to stay well and stay healthy, and to know that sometimes people, I've seen this, I've had some clients where, you know, they're saying something and the other one says, no, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. And then the whole atmosphere becomes a little bit more, let's just say, there's a lot of tension, and we don't want that tension for anyone. So here are just a few examples of what I share for families to help them to keep the peace. And validate feelings is one of the items that I notice a lot of frontline workers tend to forget to do when they're trying to support someone. And just letting people know, it can be basically one sentence. But that one sentence can make a huge impact. So, for example, if somebody is feeling really worried and concerned about something, when we say to them, oh, stop being so concerned, stop being so worried, there's nothing to be worried about. That actually is the opposite of validating someone's feelings. So just a sentence to say, wow, I can really see you're concerned about this. Just let that sink in for a moment. You know, if that person might hear from you, I can see you're concerned. And basically it's validating, yeah, I am concerned. And so that person might not have their concerns go right down, no. But what you're going to do is have them come down a little. And you can have a better conversation. You can work together on managing the situation a little bit easier. So validate those feelings. I can see you're worried. I see you're upset. I notice you're not happy right now. that one sentence, just calling it out that you recognized their feelings in that moment in order to help bring peace. I have here say, I'm sorry. And I know sometimes that's hard. When we're dealing with a spouse or when we're dealing with somebody who we don't always want to admit you're wrong. You know, I know that there's that sort of feeling sometimes in the family, like, oh, I don't want to admit I'm wrong. You know, he's wrong. But there are so many articles and studies around the word I'm sorry. And it does something to the other person. So as an example, I wouldn't say to someone, oh, you think I took your purse? I'm sorry, I took your purse. Because I didn't take their purse. They misplaced their purse and they're blaming me in the moment. So what I would encourage people to say is, oh, I'm sorry we can't find your purse right now. Or I'm sorry you're going through this right now. But throw in those words, I'm sorry. So validate, yeah, I can see you're really worried about your purse. And I'm sorry this has happened. See how that can cause a little bit more calming reaction as opposed to, I don't know where your purse is, leave me alone. Or, you know, you're always losing it, you know, which can be a natural reaction for some family members. So validating someone's feelings, saying, I'm sorry, this is happening for you. Then I like to encourage people to use something that I trademarked, but I always tell people you can say it because for me, it feels a little bit more comfortable for people, is therapeutic reasoning. So using therapeutic reasoning, what is this all about? Therapeutic reasoning is reasoning that is logical to the person you're supporting. As you may be aware, people tend to go backwards in time depending on their type of dementia. They may go in and out of reality of what's going on today. So for example, somebody might say, when are we going to the doctors? And a family member would say, well, we went yesterday. And the person may say, no, we didn't. Yes, we did. We went yesterday. No, we didn't. You know, again, we don't want to cause that upset in the room. So therapeutic reasoning is something that I encourage people to use as a way to keep the peace, keep things calm, but we're also using it because it's so difficult to reason with somebody sometimes. Very, very difficult to reason. So also with therapeutic reasoning, we are providing reassurance for the person. Reassurance that I feel a lot of people don't get enough of that have dementia. Sadly, they're not reassured about what day it is or who's supposed to come or what's happening next. What am I supposed to do today? A lot of people aren't getting enough reassurance. But there's times when, let's just say there's some anxiety, we want to keep the peace. I encourage people to maybe agree with them. Don't correct them and say, you know, we went yesterday, you're wrong. But maybe to say, oh, well, how about I call and find out if we can get an appointment soon? Something like that, just to kind of change things up as opposed to trying to correct the person. So agreeing with them, even though if it's incorrect, you know, I remember situations where a gentleman really felt, I used to work in long-term care for many years. There was a gentleman who only spoke Cantonese and, you know, I'm trying to reassure him on paper that, you know, this is Vancouver that people were trying to do. He didn't believe it. He thought he was in Hong Kong. And so instead of correcting him, we just said, Hong Kong? Yep, Hong Kong. Hong Kong, good, you know, that kind of thing to help him to stay calm. Telling them that you're going to look into it. This is another way that we can do this. And I'll tell you, there's been many, many cases where people have come to me. This is what's happening. I need your help. This is what's going on. And they were really concerned about something. And when I told the person, all right, I can see you're worried. Let me look into it for you. There was times I even had like a notebook and paper and I was like, okay, what happened? And what did he say? Or what color was your lipstick that you lost? Okay, let me look into it for you. And doing just that action alone settled that person in their mind. And then we can distract and go on to other things. So using therapeutic reasoning, but just so you know, if they do come back at you and say, hey, you were supposed to look into this for me, I encourage you to say, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me look into it for you. But I always tell people, Don't use this on people that don't have dementia, who can come to our reality. I tried on my husband. It doesn't work. Okay. So don't use therapeutic reasoning. We use it to help the person who is not able to fully be able to be reasoned with. We're not here to hurt them. We're here to help them. In some cases, we might even go as far as telling them their concerns are solved. So I talk about in my book, and I just want to share a quick story about Clarence, who was trying to exit seek, trying to wander out into the community. And when I teach people to become detectives to figure out why he needs to leave. There's always a reason for the behavior. So understanding why he was trying to leave. When we asked him, he told us he had to go home. Well, I like to go deeper. Well, what do you need to do when you get home? And he said he had to go milk the cows. Okay, so now we know why he's anxious, why he's concerned. So I had to tell Clarence, oh my goodness, Clarence, I use therapeutic reasoning. I can see you're worried about those cows. I don't blame you. Now tell me, who normally helps you milk those cows? Finding out it was his brother, I said, okay, let me look into it. I left, I went around the corner, and I came back with as much conviction as I could muster up and put my therapeutic reasoning hat on and said, Clarence, guess what? The cows have already been milked. And he said, really? Who did that? I said, your brother. Oh, okay. So we were now able to calm him to keep the peace. And I tell people, there were staff members that I worked with that tried to show him, Clarence, this is your room now. Look at your name on the wall. You don't have the cows anymore. You live here. You sold the farm. But that was only causing Clarence upset. So I tell people, if you're not comfortable using therapeutic reasoning, put it in your back pocket, because you may find it very helpful someday. And we do this to help, once again, not to hurt. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think practice makes perfect with that too, right, Karen? The therapeutic reasoning is definitely a tool that you need to practice with before you can get good at it. So in the interest of time, and if it's okay with you, Karen, I know we talked about giving examples, but I'd like to keep you going, if that's all right. And
Yeah.
then when we get to the pause, then perhaps Kathy and I can share some stories, or even better, perhaps some of our webinar participants can share some of their stories. So that's good with you. We'll move on to the second tip.
So the rest of the tips will be really quick, a little bit more quicker. So just so you know that, as I mentioned about Clarence, I had to go into his reality. We need to be understanding that he is going to have trouble coming to our reality. So it's more important if you can adapt this tip to be in that person's reality. And is there an example that anybody wants to share with this one, or should we keep moving on?
Kathy,
Sure, I had a good example. I think because that one didn't take very long, I'll jump in really quick and I'll try to be fast. So I wanted to share an example about a client of ours, a husband and wife, and the husband had, fairly advanced dementia, and he was pretty good most of the day. Really, honestly, one of the most pleasant gentlemen I've ever met, just delightful. But in the evening, he would just get so distraught because he couldn't find his wife and his children, even though his wife was just there with him. And it was so hurtful. She felt hurt by that he didn't recognize her. And it was always just this period of time in the evening. And so what we ended up suggesting that she would do is to say, oh, I know your wife. She's such a great lady. And then he wasn't upset that this person that was with him wasn't his wife. He recognized that she also knew his wife, who he adored, and it calmed him right down that she was being in his time frame, because he was remembering his wife as a younger person and he was remembering his children as younger. So the other thing that she would say to him, oh, the kids are just out with their friends. And so by being with him in the time frame that he was at when he was sundowning in the evening, it just allowed him to be much more calm and relaxed, not worrying about where his wife and children were, and being comfortable with the lady who was with him, who also knew his wife, even though that was his wife. So it was kind of an interesting story and a thing to sort of really see in person. So I wanted to share that with everybody.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you. So we can move on to tip number 3 that I really want people to try to adapt on a regular basis, if not daily, that we want to focus on what that individual living with symptoms of dementia can do, not focus on what they can't do. I have seen this with some families becoming very frustrated. He's not fixing the recycling properly anymore. He's mixing it all up. Well, maybe we can focus on what he can do. What are the other activities he likes to participate in the house? There's another situation of washing and drying dishes and putting dishes away. So this family, he used to always put the dishes away, and now the wife is finding it in all different places. So now his job is to wash the dishes, and then if she'll help to re-clean something if it wasn't clean, because she's going to be drying, and she puts away. So they had a new pattern that they were doing together. Some people are really good at advocacy work, but yet can't do some of their volunteer roles that they used to do, but they can do more advocacy. Everyone is going to be different, but it's changing that mindset on what they can do instead. It's seeing the glass half full.
Can I add to that one too?
Yeah.
Do I have 2 seconds? I just love that one. And the way I look at it too, Karen, is trying to help people have success. We all feel better if we are successful, and also if we have a sense of purpose. And so I think that aligns with helping people find what they can do to have that sense of success and that sense of purpose. And it just really reminds me of one of our clients who I just adore, and she was attending a program, a daily program for people with moderate dementia. And she was there early and she was there at the end, and she had some extra time before her ride. And so the caregivers enlisted her to help bring the preschool children up to their program and back to their classroom again. And this sense of purpose absolutely changed how this lovely lady looked. Like, her expression on her face went from sort of a little bit confused, a little bit worried, not quite sure what to do with herself during these periods of time while she was waiting, to actually having so much purpose and absolutely thrilled with the fact that they needed her and she had a really important job, and that she was in charge of sort of getting these children to and from a program. So just finding that thing that really gives people with dementia a sense that they're valued and that they are needed. So that would be what I'd like to add there.
Absolutely. And with my background in therapeutic recreation, like I said, I can go so deep on this, coming up with personalized ways that people can get that feeling of meaningful, purposeful types of daily programming to make them feel good about themselves, to build up their self-confidence again. So yeah, so we'll move on to the tip number 4. Just letting people know it's so important to try to engage positively. Some people get just sort of that, is this good or is this bad? When they hit a later stage of their dementia, they're just trying to decipher good or bad. So in that case, let's just keep things positive. Let's keep the mood light. Let's maybe tell little jokes and just use that tone of voice that's a little bit more positive. You probably heard this verse before, but I changed it up a little bit. And it says here, people with dementia may forget what you said, may forget what you did, and may even forget your name. However, they're more likely to recall how you made them feel. And I just, I think this is so important to keep that smile on, to keep your tone positive, because if you make them feel embarrassed, you make them feel unwanted, not useful, that sort of thing, or, stupid. I remember people telling me, I hate feeling stupid. And some people are trying to correct them all the time. And it's not working. So we don't want the anxiety. We don't want the room, like I said, with hostility. We want to keep the peace.
Yeah, absolutely, Karen. And I can think of one lady that I would visit, and every time I would go into her room, and her family would even comment on it, she would just light up. Like, she was just so delighted to see me. And really, during our visit, I would compliment her blouse, I would compliment her hair. We would talk about things that I knew were of interest to her. She used to be an artist. We talk about that. And then every time I left her, I would give her a big hug. And my gosh, do I miss big hugs right now, for sure. But I would give her a big hug and a big smile. And so we both left feeling positive. But every time, even though she didn't know who I was most of the time, she certainly couldn't remember my name exactly as you said, but she knew how I made her feel. And really, she made me feel the same way. So impactful. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's hard to do, but trying our best to make the situation more positive. And then the last tip I just want to share is just a reminder. Sometimes we forget, but we're not going to be able to change the other person. As much as we want to go in there and fix those neurons and make them fire and make them work again, sadly, that's not going to happen. I wish I had the magic wand. But all we can do in our own abilities is to change how we respond to the situation. We have the ability to change for that individual. Again, do you want to be right or do you want peace? And I just want to share a quick story about a woman that finally figured out that when she would visit her husband in the care home, when it was time for, he was happy to see her, they had a great visit, but when it was time for her to leave, she'd take her purse and put it over her shoulder, or put on her coat and put her purse over the shoulder, and he always wanted to go with her. Well, let's go, we're going home. He's watching her do this, and noticed after some time that it caused him lots of upset. The staff had to get involved and distract him and calm him down. Where is she going? Why can't I be with her? So instead, we talked about a way that she could, reduce this issue, is that she kept her purse in the car. She would lock her purse in the trunk of her car and go in and then just say, I'm just going to the washroom, and then sneak off to the washroom, show the staff she's going, and then he would not see that trigger of the purse. So just changing our ways. This is the best thing we can do to help that person. And speaking of changing our ways, it's getting that reminder of what we can say verbally and what we can do with our nonverbal communication cues. So, for example, just reminding people the importance of short, simple sentences. Reduce your words so that hopefully the neurons can fire and can understand, get that communication center working in the brain. Sometimes we have to repeat ourselves a little bit. If you notice your sentence is a little bit too long, try again if they didn't comprehend, and to reduce more words. Slow down your speech so we can hear each single word so that they can comprehend a little easier as well. Asking that one question at a time and wait for response. Sometimes the brain is affected in the subcortical region of the brain, like Parkinson's disease, for example. They need a little bit more time to process, because it's like going in there, they've got the answer, and now it has to go through channels to come out the mouth, and they want to talk to you and they want to tell you, but some people just quickly go to the next question because they're too impatient. So try to wait for that response. Maybe we need to simplify to a yes or no question. Would you like this? Yes or no. Would you like that? Yes or no, as opposed to what would you like for supper? Because that might be way too much for their brain to comprehend. And again, using that pleasant tone of voice when we're asking all these questions, or when we're trying to communicate. Because on the next slide, we're going to talk about the nonverbal communication and how important nonverbal is. As you can see in the graph, 55% is from our body language that people are reading. 38% is our tone. So again, that tone of voice, very important. Words is only 7%. Now this is for all people, most adults. This is their, this is the graph that represents their ability. Now, sadly, when people develop aphasia or more challenges in the communication center of their brain, the words really becomes less than 7%. So we have to really rely on that body language and tone. So I often will shake my head yes. I don't do no. As I mentioned, I don't want the negative response to be triggered in the person. So, oh, you want to fly to Edmonton tonight? Oh, okay. Let me look into that for you. I can see you're anxious to get to Edmonton. Let me look into it for you and I'll get back to you. Those types of things, but never to shake your head no. Lots of visual cues. So instead of saying, would you like something to drink? I might take this is my drink right now, I would hold it up to say, would you like something to drink? Really give them the verbal plus the nonverbal, or sorry, the visual cue to help them. I also encourage a lot of people to use notes, a lot of notes. Right now, I'm at an adult cognitive wellness center. I've been helping out, and the lady today was supposed to come, but they didn't put it on her calendar. They didn't write her a note, and therefore, when they were inviting her to come, this is her first time to come. She had no notes, so she says, I didn't know I was coming, so she refused to come. So I spoke with the family. We came up with some ideas of how we're going to do this. Please make sure she has that note. And if she's unsure, let me talk to her over the phone before she comes to kind of smooth things over to help her, to encourage her. So, but when that visual cue is very important for a lot of people, and people don't often use the notes enough. And then again, the positive facial expressions will really make a difference for you and your interactions. So yeah, just again, high level, lots more details can be spoken on this, but this will just help those to be reminded and validated.
Okay. I have one question that came through. This is from Vi. Her question is, how close is dementia to depression, overstress, overload? So how close is to dementia to depression or stress? Maybe it means or stress overload. I don't know. Karen or Brenda, do you have sort of something to comment on kind of the relationship between depression and dementia and being way too stressed?
Yeah, Karen, do you want to take this one?
Absolutely. Okay, so great question. As Brenda mentioned earlier, dementia is a syndrome. So those symptoms of poor memory, poor thinking, poor judgment, communication problems, and personality changes are found in many different conditions, including those that are they're not curable at this time, like Alzheimer's, but those same symptoms can show up in depression. Mm-hmm. And somebody who has untreated prolonged depression in their life can develop the same symptoms of dementia. However, we can treat depression. Once we treat depression with a variety of ways, whether it's medication, exercise, purpose, speaking to counselors, those types of things, there's ways we can fight back depression. Once we treat it, the symptoms of dementia can go away. But we definitely need treatment for that. Now, understand that stress can actually shrink our hippocampus. So the part in our brain that's responsible for memory, so one of the common symptoms of dementia, memory and learning, the hippocampus will shrink due to stress. So, and we understand now, there's lots of research out there that it can shrink it, but what grows and builds new neurons in the hippocampus is exercise. So just letting people understand that so prolonged untreated depression, if we never treat it, can turn into something more permanent like Alzheimer's disease. I learned this at a conference at University of British Columbia several years ago. And I really understand the importance of keeping our stress down. But if not, if you can't find ways to keep your stress down, try to exercise, but definitely get some support around the stress. Mm-hmm. And depression.
Mm-hmm. And Karen, this is another reason why it's so important to get the right diagnosis, mm-hmm. isn't it? Mm-hmm. Because some things that look like dementia can be treated. Mm-hmm. And so you really want to know, right?
Yeah, mm-hmm. Vitamin deficiencies, thyroid conditions can all bring on those same symptoms of dementia, but can be treated. So yes, get a really good diagnosis as much as you can. Advocate to get more testing, that sort of thing.
We don't have any other questions in the chat, so we can carry on with Brenda's section. And feel free, you guys, if you have questions, type them in, or we'll have lots of time afterwards to discuss. So.
And certainly that last question, Kathy and Karen, is just a perfect segue into this next part, which is last but not least, look after you, because you certainly cannot pour from an empty cup. Absolutely. Actually, too, for everyone's interest, for more, and this topic in itself could be an entire webinar, just like so many of the points that Karen's brought up to us. We did do in February, and on our education page, we did a webinar on taking emotional care of yourself, and a lot of that was about self-care. So we certainly invite you to have a look on our education page on the proactiveseniors.ca website. And as a follow-up to this, we'll also be sending out some resources to everybody that signed up for this webinar today. So practicing self-compassion and self-care. First of all, it's a practice. It's not something that you're expected to be perfect at. Certainly you wouldn't expect other people to be perfect when they're under stressful situations. So the important thing is not to expect that from yourself. So self-compassion is not exactly the same as self-care. Self-compassion is really regarding yourself, thinking of yourself in a compassionate way, as compared to action, which is the self-care that we're going to talk about next, some of those things that Karen touched on as well. So when we talk about self-compassion, we're talking about something that actually has a scientific effect on your brain. It will reduce cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and Karen just mentioned that. It will increase oxytocin, and the results will be that you feel better, you're happier, you feel more connected to others, and you're more motivated. So there's lots of information out there on self-compassion, but I think the keys that we want to talk about today is first of all to be mindful and aware of how you are feeling. So take time each day to think about, to find something that you're grateful for. And some days that may be that you had a hot cup of coffee this morning. Like really, there's lots of stressful situations that many of you are enduring all the time. All of us are. But be mindful of your wins. What did you do well today? Think about it. Second, you are human. Remember that. And as a result, you should give yourself a break, cut yourself some slack, reach out to other humans, and give yourself permission to be vulnerable. And last but not least, be kind to you. Speak to yourself kindly. Don't berate yourself because you maybe lost your temper a little bit with the person that you're caring for. Put your hand on your heart and forgive yourself. Hug yourself. I mean, we talked about hugs and how we all miss hugs. That touch is actually very important to your mental health. So you want to make sure that you have that touch. And if you don't have anybody that can touch you, then you should give yourself a hug. And so last, talking about self-compassion and self-care, I looked at this picture when I put it on the website or on this webinar slide, and I thought, that looks a lot like Karen. Perhaps that was Karen's first job. Speaking of keeping a sense of humor, looks a lot like you, Karen. So make sure, like this metaphor, put your oxygen mask on first. Absolutely, self-care. Check in with yourself at the end of every day. Ask yourself, did I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep last night? Did I eat at least 3 meals? Did I drink 8 glasses of water? I don't know about you, but I have a hard time keeping up with that. Did I get any exercise? Even a 10-minute spurt of walking around the house, it makes a difference. Did I spend time on an activity that I enjoy? Did I spend time with someone other than the person I care for? Now, obviously in this, what we're going through right now, it might not be possible to be physically with other people, but even a phone call or FaceTime with someone that you care about other than the person that you're caring for is helpful in connecting and giving you that socialization that you need. If you've answered no to more than 2 of these questions, then you absolutely need to have a look at your schedule and potentially make a change. I'd love to hear any tips that anyone else has in terms of self-care as well. So final thoughts, people from the Alzheimer's Society are here with us today, and this is something that I learned early on. When you have met one person with dementia, you have met one person with dementia. Everyone's experience is unique, and although many of the tips that Karen has given us and we've talked about, and potentially more that we're going to share today, some might work today They might not work tomorrow. You just have to continue to try and to remember that every experience is unique and individual. And last, caregiving is a journey, but it's also something that we learn. And continually we're learning, practicing, screwing up, making mistakes, and trying again. Never stop learning. And the Alzheimer's Society has an amazing amount of resources, and maybe some of the ladies or the people that are here with us from them might share some of those with us. But first and foremost is their website, alzheimers.ca. And last, never forget how amazing you are and how important the work that you are doing is, whether you're doing it professionally or as an unpaid caregiver for your loved one. You are amazing. Thank you. Kathy, back to you.
Thank you guys so much. That was so informative. And, we have some time. If people have any questions, you can unmute yourself. You just hit the little microphone button and click unmute. We'd love to take any questions. Or Karen and Brenda, if you have any more examples, or Judy or Judith, if you have any more examples you want to share, or if the participants have a story they want to share, we'd love to hear it. We've got lots of time. I don't have anywhere I need to be.
Well, we ran almost our full hour, so that's fantastic timing. Karen, you did such a great job. And Kathy, that's wonderful.
Let's see if
So
there's
does anybody
any other questions coming in. So you can type them in if you don't want to talk, or maybe while I watch the chat, Brenda or Karen, do you have any other sort of good stories or examples that might kind of hit home to people?
when Karen was talking earlier about the get into the therapeutic reasoning and getting into their reality, I know when I worked in senior living, I can't tell you how many times I had a resident come to me and tell me that a housekeeper had stolen something from them. And I think you made a reference to theft as well. And I only wish that I knew then what I know now, but I just sort of fumbled through it. But I have to say that at least I had the instincts and cared about these people. So I was able to at least acknowledge their concerns, go back to them to their suite and potentially look around and whatever. But yeah, it was so important to them that we actually acknowledged that, this was something very stressful, and didn't just pass it off as, oh, don't worry about it. That's nobody's stolen anything. You're okay. that kind of thing. So yeah. Somebody is having trouble unmuting, Kathy.
Yeah.
So.
How do I do that? There's the mute all, but I don't see an unmute all. Okay, while I look for that, I'm going to read you the question that came from Shauna. So Shauna sent a question that said, can you talk a little more about sundowning? My mother can be very alert during the day and very different at night.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. Just so you know, sundowning is a phenomenon. All right. So a phenomenon means we know it's happening. We just don't fully understand why this is happening. So another thing that I always, we mentioned it a little bit earlier, is that anytime there is a new behavior, a behavior change, then we need to ask ourselves why. Why is this happening? We can't just blame it on sundowning. Oh, it's sundowning time. This person is going to be acting this way. But to go into the real reason why. Are they in pain at this time of day? Maybe their medications have worn off. Maybe they need their next dose, or maybe they've been walking around all day. Now they're in pain and they need to have some medication. So I teach people to think anything physical. Maybe they're exhausted. Maybe they're so tired they never had a nap, and maybe they need to have a nap. Maybe they're hungry by this time of day, and people say, wait for supper, it's 6 o'clock. But between 5 and 6, they're really agitated and really not doing well. Maybe they need a snack. So there's all different kinds of things. Maybe they're becoming more concerned about something. They've gone backwards in time in the memory onion layer that I often use as a metaphor. They go backwards in time into an older layer of that memory onion, and they really think they have to go home and cook supper for their family or that sort of thing. So it's understanding why this behavior is happening. And once we know the why, we can get creative. We don't have to resort to the medications that often people say that they need to stay calm. There are other creative ideas. And if anybody really has a situation that they need some help with, I do offer a free 20-minute consult just to help you open up your mindset to some new ideas that I can offer you personalized solutions for it. So if you are interested, I did post my website if you want to learn more about me at dementiasolutions.ca. This is what I love to do, is help families come up with some creative solutions to get through the day-to-day to keep the peace.
I am having a hard time unmuting everybody. I don't know, Brenda, if you want to have a look at it, and I'll go back to the chat and see.
Kathy, if you click on the little people, the show participants,
Yeah.
you'll get it at the sign, and then usually at the side you can unmute individuals if that's what you're trying to do.
Like I can see the mute all, and then if I click that, this will mute everyone.
But if you click on the 3 buttons for the people, you should be able to unmute single people. At least that's how Zoom works. So I assume this is the same way.
Okay, I'm going to kind of work through that, but let me just have a quick look. Thanks, Andrea, because you
in the
talk.
settings, Kathy, it is set to allow attendees to unmute. That is set, so people should be able to click on their little microphone and unmute themselves.
Maybe Judy, you give it a try too. See if you can do it. I'll look for other slides here. Okay. That was great about sundowning. And is it possible to have access to the presentation slides after? Yes, definitely. I probably didn't hit that at the beginning. So we will post the slides and we'll post the video on our website, and you can find that on the education page, and then you can access it there. So you most certainly can see that, Connie. Yeah, and
I unmuted, so I clicked on my microphone.
Okay, good, it works. I was panicking. I thought, oh my God, I don't know how to do this, because I thought it should be working. So yeah, anyone else, if you want to chat, just unmute your microphone and go ahead and ask any question you might have.
If people are looking for questions, I'll just fill the quiet space with an example. But I was thinking about the one point you made about how they won't remember what you said or your name, but they'll always remember how you feel. And I have experienced countless situations where being with somebody with dementia, where they aren't communicating, and they will show their agitation or their whatever those, more negative or upset feelings that they're having, if their caregiver, if they can sense it. When I was working with private care, it's like they knew the difference between that person who might be, it could be a caring caregiver who's actually, maybe it's just a bad day for them. They're tired. They worked 16 hours the day before, and they're just hanging out, sitting with that person. They're not talking. And that person with dementia gets so agitated because it's like they sense that person's just there sort of filling in the time. And, we used to have to deal with that all the time in juggling caregivers, etc. Yeah, because they knew, even though they couldn't say, I didn't like that person, she didn't want to talk to me, right? They knew it, they showed it in different ways because they couldn't say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's